Hey guys, it's Satori. Let's see if we can make this challenge a little bit easier to do if I show you a video on it. So I'm going to start, I've already got a pretty complex cloud here that I'm going to start with. Let me just show you one thing real quick before we get started. I'm going to make an image of Jim Morrison from The Doors. And so I've already started with a prompt here. It's not quite done, but I wanted to show you guys one thing is the preview render. This will show you kind of a rough look of what your prompt is going to look like when you get started. And you can use this, it's actually really useful if you want to see if a particular artist or if the AI is going to know, in this case, Jim Morrison. You can just put that name in the prompt window, turn on preview render, and see immediately if the AI even knows what that directive is or not. So I'm going to edit my prompt just a little bit and add Jim Morrison as the Lizard King. And now we're getting a look that's much more like Jim Morrison than just a generic rock star. I'm going to use the Starlight animated filter here. Right now I'm more interested in the composition. I'm not so concerned that it might look a little cartoony, because as we upscale and we change it, first of all, it's not necessarily going to look cartoony with this prompt, but the cartoon-like elements of it we can take out with different filters as we upscale and edit this. So this is just to get us started. And this is without the cloud, just to show you what the prompt looks like on its own. While that renders, the first thing to notice, I'm rendering at 1024 by 1024. So I'm at the maximum size that I can do on canvas in one shot here. So when I send this cloud to the image-to-image input, I'm actually getting, it automatically sized my generation frame to the aspect ratio, but it's maxed out at the size of 1024 width-wise. So we're actually starting by downscaling. This is just a limitation on Playground. If we had the ability to render at a larger size, we wouldn't need to do this downscale. But one of the advantages of having this downscale process is we're kind of compressing the amount of information that's in the image. So we're starting with something fairly small. So because we have to do an upscale to get back up to this original size, we'll be able to add a lot of little details and elements in it. So kind of a psychedelic rock star scene is a good type of prompt to put in, because we'll be getting multiple images and a lot of not random details. We'll be getting a nice composition, but it'll be a fairly exciting image. Now, one of the reasons I use the cloud, notice how this renders out just as just a straight on shot of Jim Morrison looking at the camera. I call this type of composition a mug shot because it's really not interesting. It's just a dude standing there. So one of the things that the cloud will do is it's going to undulate the scene. It's going to twist it around and make it a much more complex scene than what we're going to get when we don't use any image-to-image input. So I'm going to start, all right, we've already got the cloud in the image-to-image. I'm going to start fairly low on the image-to-image strength, and I'm just going to produce a bunch of them across, and I'm going to increase the image strength as we go from 17. I'm going to go from 17 to about 47 and just do a bunch here real quick. I'm going to use fairly low quality right now because I'm really just focused on the composition. I don't need the fine details yet, and I also, for the video, I don't want to have to edit out all the rendering times. I don't want any refinement. We'll use random seeds, and I'm going to use the DPM SDE Keras sampler. Actually, because it's a pro sampler, I'm going to use the Euler sampler so that if you're not on a pro account, you'll be able to follow along exactly what I'm doing. All right, so let's just step through. We're going to increase this by a couple of points with every click. Just to give us a variety of options. And as we turn up the image-to-image input, it's going to lock into more of these elements in the cloud. So you'll see the earlier ones are going to be more simple compositions. And as we get higher up in scale, in image-to-image strength, it's going to become much more detailed, finer details, more complex compositions. And 47 was where I said we'd go. So that should give us the wide range of elements that are tying into that cloud. And we can already see that we're getting some really much more interesting art concepts of Jim Morrison in the desert. And of course, as we get too high, this is overfitting in the cloud. It's trying to fit that cloud too much, so we're getting really weird elements. But we could always cut out if we decided we like this lighthouse, or I don't know, we want this hand grabbing this wave, or we want this wave section over here. We could always, even though this is not one we would probably use, there's a lot of interesting elements in here that we may very well come back to. There's an interesting vision of the Lizard King. Let's see what else we got. All right, so starting at the lower levels, we're getting less of the details of the cloud. It's very soft looking, but it is a good composition. I like that. If you had a high heel shoe on, that'd be even more perfect. That's actually not bad. I would come back to that. That's really good. I'd like to fix this lizard and make it cooler, but this may be the one we go with, maybe changing out this piece up here. I like the booze bottle as the smokestack to this building. I think this is going to be the one we might come back to, although this one's very nice. And I do like the desert scene, but I wanted to have just one image of Jim, although that's really good too. Tough choice. All right, let's take a look at the things. I do like this one. I'm going to hold down the Option key to make a copy of that. I really do like this one. I do like this one, but I think the more complex compositions we have here will give us less we have to do. So we may do both of these. Our options would be to either do both of these or to take this section here and replace this section here, maybe flipping it so that he would be looking down this direction at him. But I don't like that. I like this composition where he's looking at the body here. I want to do this one, and so we're going to do both of these. I may just do one in the video if this takes us a while, but I'm going to show you the example, and I'll probably publish both of these so you can see them both when they're done. Of the two, this one is going to be a little more complicated to upscale because we're going to have to cut it in half and render this leg as a separate piece. So that can be, I don't know, a little undesirable. This one, because the faces and the body are more or less right in the middle, we'd be able to render this panel right here in one shot and get a really good composition, and then render the outside pieces. So I think this will give us a more complex scene and be a little bit easier of a process to show you guys. So let's start with this one. I'm just going to make a copy, and I'm just going to work down on this page. So what I want to do now is crop this image to half the width, which, because it was 1024 wide, it's always going to be 512 to be half of that width. And when I do that, I can then copy this image by holding down, I was holding down the Shift and the Option key. I double clicked it, holding down the Shift key and just sliding this over. And now you'll see that I have the same image. You can't even tell where the seam is in it. So I've got two perfect cuts of that image. And that might be fine. I'll probably try with just these pieces, but because the main subject of this scene is right in the middle of it, or roughly in the middle of it, I'm also going to make me a tile that is just the meat of the scene right there. So I'm going to start with the left side. I'm going to send that to image, and I'm going to keep this fairly high at 47. I'll grab my generation frame, and now I want to get away from the starlight element, and I'm going to go to Copax, which is going to give us more of a rough, kind of grainy look, more of a realistic look, and we're going to scale that up now. When I pulled that and scaled it, I was holding down the shift key so that it maintains the aspect ratio, but it's now maximized for the top height of 1024. So we're getting not quite a double upscale here, but pretty close, almost double. And we'll get a lot of details that are going to be in the scene that we didn't get in the original one. You can see that the face isn't that great here. This is a fairly small face. I'm assuming we're going to have to come back in here and do another upscale in this area. But let's see what we get. We'll start with this. We'll do a couple of these to give us some options. I'm going to do a couple of the right side to give us some options. And I'm going to do a couple of the middle piece just to see in case we need it. That can sometimes be an easier way to stitch it all together if our stitch line is not directly in the middle of the scene. And you can see, oh, that's funny. We didn't get Jim Morrison. We got the lizard over here. And this was just a mutant. So this is why we would have needed that central piece we're rendering below that captures the actual scene. And then we'll probably come back in here with one of these bodies and re-render this at a higher scale, a higher resolution again. Maybe the face. That face isn't bad. Since it's in the sky, it can be a little bit soft and abstract. We don't need super sharp eyes here, but I do want this to be very sharp and clear. This is actually very nice. I like that. I like the city back here. This is cool. I love the lizard. I wish we could integrate that. I mean, I might actually come back and integrate that somewhere in here because that's really perfect. The way that blended, that would have been funny if it would have blended better into the lower half of the body. This is really interesting. The way the legs are the wave and the body is down here. And we have a cool little plane, and the plane doesn't look bad. Planes often look a little mutated. This one does. We'll come in here and take that wing off. In fact, let's do that right now. So these little edits, we don't want the AI to continue to pick up on this as we're upscaling, so it's worth it to take a second and just clean up little things that might give us trouble going forward. I don't love this little circle here. So not a big deal, but let's just get that out of there while we have the opportunity to do it. I'd like to use this right panel. Good enough. I think this could be really, really interesting. So I'm going to come down here and make another copy again. And this side panel looked really good. We want to see what that's going to look like as a merge. Okay, so we're going to go through and blend this. One issue here is that we've got the city on this side and the water here. So we will have to be a little bit creative about how we merge this. But I like this part. I don't like the writing in the corner, so I'm going to get that out of here while it's on my mind. Okay, the plane looks good. I think this will be fine, and then we'll come back in after we stitch it and do an upscale just of this area. So I don't think we're going to need the center pieces unless we use one of these for our upscale. So for now, I'm going to go through and stitch this one together. I'm going to start by erasing a fairly good chunk down the middle. And I'm going to do this in a way that's going to help the AI. What I'm not going to do is erase a straight line down the middle and try to paint it in, because I'll end up just getting two images with a hard line down the middle. So I'm going to erase in a way that's going to force the AI to be creative and see the text, the patterns and the flow of the image from one side to the other, and force it to kind of fill in more of like an S pattern. And I'm going to really focus, first of all, on the big things that I know I don't want, which is that sun right there. I don't want two suns. So I know that this section is going to look significantly different. I can just rip that out. It's going to be based on this part. This section, we can keep that halo area. I think I'm going to pull this out this way and let that really get a good rerun at this sky here. This way we won't get a really sharp transition from this image to this image. It's got a very long run to span as it goes from these radial kind of God ray patterns as we go into these clouds. I think this is going to merge real nicely with this type of cut here. So this area here where we're doing the ocean and the land, I like the city part. I like the ocean part too. But I'm going to try cutting, I guess I'm going to cut into that this way. And hopefully this gives us some kind of a cool little transition here. All right, in this case, I'm now going to switch over and I want to start doing cuts on this side around his butt. And then I'm going to come back over here and cut out this direction, which is where I want it to focus when it fills in from this side, so that we maintain a lot of this detail. And I'm going to sacrifice a lot of this detail, specifically this right here. Gotta go. And now it can fill in based on this type of fill and blend that in. The hand needs more room there, so that's got to go. This area, I want the wave and the denim and this on this side, so I'm cutting it off from the left side as we come around this corner. So now what I've done is not like a straight cut down the middle, but I've undulated it and I'm moving it with the pattern. If you look at the pattern of the sky, the pattern of these rays, so the parts that I erased are quite large, but I'm giving it a very good run to be able to fill in and blend these patterns together. That's a lot of talk. Let's see if that all actually works now. So we're already at max vertical size at 1024. I'm going to go ahead and maximize the width so that it can get the best possible look at the whole image. And we will try to in-paint that middle section. And then depending on the results that we get here, we might have to come back in and edit or adjust. And when I make future videos, this is where the theme music will probably come in. And I would have normally had this at a higher quality setting to really get a lot of the details out of this. But I set it down to 50 just so that it wouldn't be taking us 2 or 3 minutes to render. Hopefully it doesn't. Hopefully we don't get an error. And by the way, I've been using Playground Chooses. I thought I was on SDXL this whole time. So that infill was actually from Playground's model, which is not bad. Let's take a look. So I don't want this rough edge that exists, so I'm going to crop that down. So yeah, in general, this is good. I don't love this transition line right here. I'd like that to be a little more radial, but I can live with that. This is fine. This all looks good. The detail here is good. We can see verifying that the publish button is activated, meaning that we didn't, as we stitched it, we haven't missed any pixels, so everything's filled in correctly. This blended through here really, really nicely in the legs. So the only thing that I'm really interested in now is this face. I think the hand isn't great. 1, 2, 3, 4. I think I might fix that hand with the object eraser. And I'm not going to sweat the body too much. and then we'll just come back in and get a really nice high resolution face. All right, I can live with that hand. We will do the face and be on our way. Now, when I'm doing this, I'm going to be very careful about the dimensions as I upscale so that I can downscale and get back to the same exact size and position of where this face is. So I made a copy of the piece we're working on, and since I'm focused on the face, I'm going to just crop this down so we get in as tight as possible, get the best possible upscale of the face. I'm going to get the whole hair and everything. All right, and I want this to be exactly square. I don't care what the size of it is. I just want it square so that we can render it at 1024 by 1024. And then when we size it back down, we'll size it back down to whatever this was that we cropped it at, which in this case is going to be, I'll do 210 by 210. Good enough. Doesn't really matter if it's centered as long as the face is fully in the frame. All right, this is going to be our reference now. So this image is exactly the size and scale as our primary image that we're working on. So we're going to use this face as the image-to-image input, very low-quality image. I'm also switching back over to regular stable diffusion. And I'm going to try it in Copax, and I'll probably try a few different filters and see how the face looks. So I want to go maximum size, so it's going to be super high resolution compared to where it's going to end up. And we're going to do fairly high image-to-image value so that we get the face in that position and not a different scene. All right, so let's start with Copax, Starlight. We'll do no filter, just for S's and G's, and Protovision. And then depending on which one gives us the best face, we will select one and paint it into the picture. This lip is too weird, and I'm not going to fix that, even though the rest of that image looked really good. This is soft, it's nice. Oh, this is the no filter one. That might be an interesting one to use. This was Starlight. I like it. I could use that. And this was Copax. I don't know. It's hard to choose. This one to me is too soft. There's too few details that when we downscale it to this size, it's just gonna be mud. This one might be preferable for that reason, but it's actually kind of too sharp in some ways. So I'm gonna go with the Copax one, which I think is on. Is that what we were using before? Yeah, we were doing Copax before, so that'll be fairly consistent with what we've been doing in terms of its look. Now I'm going to butt it right up against the one that we used to create it so that I can see that little red line that's surrounding it is telling me that I'm locked in right on the foot of it. Now I'm going to just resize it down till it locks into the top of it. And now I've got this image upscaled to this resolution, but at the same size as the original. So you can see we've got a much better face. I'm not going to pull in all of these clouds and details. I'm just going to erase the face out and put that back in. So I'm going to pull that up here. It doesn't need to be that big, but I want a fairly large eraser so that I'm making fairly flat-sized cuts or flat angle cuts on it. And I'm going to cut right into the hairline and blend it in there and in that shoulder. So that's going to be our new face. And to place it, I'm going to turn down the opacity of that image that I've got laying over it. I'm going to get in here and lay it exactly where the other image was. And depending on how that looks, So there's a little bit of edge here that I'm going to in paint. I don't even see, I can sort of see the edge here. I don't know that I would mess around with in painting it. I don't know that I would really, if we zoom out and look at this edge, if we zoom in, we can see that this is where the cut is. But I suspect when we zoom out, you're not going to see this. So this may not even require in painting. If that's the case, if just laying it over is acceptable and you're not going to in paint it into the image, and for me, I believe it is, that's fine. At that scale, that's perfectly fine. Draw, if you click on the canvas and draw a box so that you're selecting both the background and that new face, I'm going to do Control C to copy it. I'm going to come down here and paste it. So now it's a flat image with our new face, Jim Morrison, the Lizard King in the desert. We didn't get the lizard on this one, but I'm probably going to come back. And where was our other one? I do want to come back up here, maybe do this one with the lizard, or maybe even revisit some of the crazier ones that we saw. But that's the basic process. At this point, it's fully upscaled back to the original size that we were working at in this cloud. Bring that down here and have a look. So we've gone from downscale back to upscale, back to the original size of our cloud. You can see how the cloud gave us this kind of U-shaped composition, and at the higher image-to-image values, the AI locked into all this undulating cloud, so it actually gave us a very cloudy image, which in this case, because it's kind of a dreamlike sequence, we actually want. If it wasn't a dreamlike sequence, if it was, say, like a Baroque scene with a lot of flowers in it, where all these clouds are, would probably be like a flower garden type of scene. That's generally what we have. I want to cut that outer edge, bothers me. I don't want this white outer edge, so I'm just going to crop it down a tiny, tiny bit. Just to take that out. I do like, and I didn't really notice how the city is blending into the ocean here. That was what I was concerned about when we were stitching it, and I hadn't really looked at it, but that is really cool. I like that a lot. All right, so there's still a little bit of a shadow in this corner, but I'm not going to sweat on that. We got that rough edge off. A little touch of contrast, just the tiniest little touch. I might even bring the saturation down just a smidge, give it more of a retro look. Yeah. Done. Hope you guys liked it. I will post a link to it, to this image from my profile in the video. And I will be seeing you guys shortly back in the playground.